Welcome back to Pull Up with Miles and Owen. It has been a minute. We were busy. We were off for a little while covering a little thing called the WNBA playoffs, but we had to come back with a huge guest as apology for our absence. Today, we've got a media superstar, a former Hooper. This season, she joined the Liberty broadcast as a color commentator and an analyst, and was last heard emceeing the championship parade at City Hall. She also does great work with Meadowlark Media, so be sure to check her out there as well. Thank you for pulling up with us, Roz Gold-Onwude.
Hey, hey, what's up, guys? Thank you for having me.
We're so excited, and it's the perfect time to have you on because yeah, the Liberty just won the championship, their first in franchise history. So before we talk about your journey into the space, we have to start with the champs, the Liberty. What made this team so special? What made this the team that finally brought a basketball title back to New York City after 51 years?
100% for me, it's their depth. I look at this Liberty Championship really as a symbol of organizational success from the top down. When you think about, so I'll start with the players and the team first. Like, there's so much talent. We knew that core group was superstar level. But the real X factor starting the season was like who were all these faces on the bench, who would emerge. And it really turned out that they were not only going to be X factors, they were going to be key contributors, not just in the regular season, but like deep in the playoffs. You could easily tell a story of important contribution from, well, obviously Leonie Febish, also Niara Sabally, also Kayla Thornton or Kennedy Burke. You could point to all of this, or even the sacrifice and the humility of Courtney Vandersloot. I mean, and obviously you have this team that's been anchored around all season, the leadership of Jonquel Jones, Sabrina Ionescu, and of course, Brianna Stewart. And then Benijah Laney, like just like literally, now that we're all done with the season, I mean, the girl can barely walk, y'all. Like I've
Yeah.
seen her in practice. Like it's like, can people help me get out of the chair? And literally is being helped out of the chair. That person was in games 1 through 5 of the WNBA finals, putting her face in it, like just like fighting for everything. Like I was like, the heart and the toughness of Benijah really sets the tone for the team. So okay, just the team, but I do want to say like why I think it's organizational success, and y'all could jump in with your thoughts too. Like, so one, getting that depth, you need to have a executive GM and staff that can recognize international scouting. That was international scouting success that has some vision. Some of the things we're seeing bearing fruit right now, we're being plotted for, like Leonie Febish, a few years now in the making. So like the patience, the ability to have a vision and go for it in the execution. So shout out to Jonathan Kolb, Liberty GM, and like building a roster that was complete and was able to be leaned on down the stretch, and a coach that believed in her roster down the stretch, because a lot of times like rotations get short. And then I'll just point out the Tsai family, Clara Wu Tsai and Joe Tsai. They took an organization that like people didn't really want to touch, the franchise. In 2019, it was talks of losing money. People didn't know where the W was going. And not only did they come in and buy it, but then they like really believed in lifestyle of their players, charter flights, taking fines. Being on the Liberty is a very first class affair. It's very nice, and that translates. And then to finally like they bought this team for 10 to 15 million dollars. There's reports it's worth 200 million now. So it just talks about when you plant some seeds and you water it well, plus a number of factors. This was organizational success to get New York their first ever WNBA championship.
I just want to respond to that because I'm totally with you about it being a top down and talking to JK about his philosophy. And I think that's something that has helped to separate New York in his drafting philosophy for years, or in the size investing money so that they have those overseas people that are looking after the draft picks that they make in the third round because they understand the importance of draft and stash. And Jonathan Kolb says, especially as these expansion drafts are coming. You want to have as deep of not just a roster of 12 players, but of players that you have potentially under contract on these future deals that you can watch them develop, bring them over, or have the option not to bring them over and save it a year here or there. Like we didn't see Marine this year, we didn't see Han this year, but those are players that could potentially still be in the mix in the future. They've got other stashes. Leo, they've been on Leo since before Sandy was here
Mhm.
because they had Walt Hopkins, who was the coach before her, and Dustin Gray, who still works with the team a little bit behind the scenes with some of that international scouting as players that were both members of the German national team. So that made them so comfortable, not just with Leo, but with Niara as well. And the investment in knowing that she was going to have to miss a year, but still taking her with a lotto pick and knowing that, okay, now we can stash her basically for a year, even as a lottery pick and build up. Because, yeah, last year that was the difference between New York and Las Vegas is when Las Vegas had players go down, they were able to lean on the depth that they had to make the difference. Where Sandy Brondello, all of 2023, was running those five starters into the ground. And this year, her philosophy was able to shift because of everything that happened between December and February of last year.
Absolutely. Guys, like, what did you think? Because the three of us were sitting together for game five. And so, just kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, we were sitting up there and we all noticed the same time. And I mean, you guys were literally like yelling. You like almost fell out of your chair. You, you guys were like, wait a second, who's on the court?
Yep.
We were like, what? There's no guard on the court. And you guys pointed out, you were like, we've never seen this lineup. It was a huge, super big lineup. It was Kayla Thornton, Niara Sabally, Leonie Febish, Brianna Stewart, and Jonquel Jones. Am I right?
Yep. Yep. That was the
And
five for the first time ever.
and you were like, what? And I only bring that up to say depth shown, and also maybe it's a little bit of like a man, shoot, this is all we need something, all the marbles, we're not hitting threes, like, Sandy went for it, but I found that to be very surprising, and it
Hmm.
worked out, but I found it to be very surprising, especially when um it's historic, it's usually this way, traditionally this way when you get further in a playoff situation, coaches typically get shorter on the rotation. Typically, you're just not seeing number 8 coming off the bench, maybe not even 7. So, like, for the Liberty to have a team that's so deep that you could really lean on for major contributions, big stretches, perhaps players who maybe in the game before played 8 minutes. I mean, it says a lot about the job done building the roster and also throughout the year, the trust that's been built between players, player and coach, players and players. So that was really unique, and it would worked out for the Liberty.
It really did. It speaks to Sandy's confidence. I think it's such a fantastic point that usually the rotation shrinks and you see lineups that you have always seen that you are familiar with. And for Sandy to assess in that moment that this is a unique scenario, everyone is gassed, like we just need something else, something different was phenomenal. And I loved your answer earlier. Like it speaks to how many elements of investment you have to nail to win a title in this league. Like the Liberty nailed it from every angle. I'm so glad you brought up Benijah Laney-Hamilton, who is someone who we're going to remember Sabrina's shot. We're going to remember the wackiness of game five. People may forget, and I hope they don't, Benijah's 21 points in game two, and just the fact that she grinded out the other four games too, as you mentioned, being like unable to walk almost after the playoff run finished. So just from all angles, what an impressive championship. And I wanted to kind of just go big picture before we move on here from the title. Because as you mentioned, we were all watching it together. I'm losing my mind in classic fashion as I tend to do in these moments. But I think there was like a real sense from all of us that this just felt massive in Barclays Center. You could sense a very palpable excitement and just a massive jump in the vibe surrounding this team. So how would you contextualize what this title means for this city?
Ooh, well, you talking to a native New Yorker. You know, you're talking to somebody. I just made a post. I got pictures of my sister and I as young basketball players in New York, at a clinic where Teresa Weatherspoon and Kim Hampton came to speak, and they're signing autographs for us. So I have great perspective to say that this is there. I absolutely feel the enormity of the moment. And I also felt the moment at Barclays, right? Studded sidelines. You got Spike there. I mean, like everybody in New York basketball media is on the sidelines. It's a packed out. Of course, it's for all the marbles. Game 5, overtime, drama, drama, drama. And like this is one of the historic first 8 franchises of the WNBA. So it's kind of crazy that New York hasn't had a championship. There have been many prolific and legendary players that continue to culturally make impact to this day on all of the basketball ecosystem, whether it's Teresa Weatherspoon or Becky Hammon or beyond. There's a number of superstars here. I think, I may be biased, but things are big in New York. So New York as a overall for professional basketball hasn't had a championship in 51 years. Like this is a city that's hugry for the chip and really excited to celebrate their champions. And you saw that during the parade. The city showed out. Like it was big. It was hugely attended. It was like even hosting the parade. I said to my friend after, I was like, yo, the crowd was lit. And why do I think the crowd was lit? Interactive, yelling out, joyful, understood the storylines, understood the cues. Sometimes you can be in front of a crowd and they're there present, but it's just no, this New York crowd was absolutely New York City, from like Uring at Sabrina to everything else in
The
between.
Sabali chants. Oh man, I got
Yeah.
chills. I got chills when it happened post game, but then again at City Hall.
And then she said she didn't even hear it post game. So it's so
Yeah.
funny, all the perspectives, like this huge moment for this girl. And so that just makes me think too. I think every single entity of this team had their nice moment. I was even thinking like Jonquel Jones getting finals MVP. I was like,
Yeah.
how fitting. I really like that. How did you guys like that? I was like, that's just perfect.
It was so beautiful. We've been massive John Quell fans for so long, and I feel like, part of our job as the media is to like spread the stories of these players and help fans get to know the players behind the scenes a little bit. And I don't think people understand the level to which John Quell is just the most wonderful, down-to-earth person. Like she will stop and ask you how your day is. She will make sure everyone gets a question. And then the consistency on the court, I mean, the work she puts in, the competitiveness, the grind, like it's all so New York City. And she's just been phenomenal in the playoffs year after year, and this year it all came together. So yeah, I
I
was
think
I was thrilled.
I think that's her Caribbean kindness. Like I really find her delightful. I won't reveal my favorites. I know. I love everybody, but boy, Jonquel is just so personable and she like really remembers interactions with you, makes you feel very welcome, has a nice greeting for you. And I say like you said, Sabali got the chance, Leone got moved into the starting lineup, like, you know, Jonquel wins MVP. Like everybody I think had their proper had a really nice moment of flowers during the run.
Yeah,
Totally.
I agree. And I know we have to move on, and I promise we will. But I just wanted to add to JJ because I think part of it is also she will make fun of us as media in a way that we feel like we're in on the joke, right? She'll have a conversation with you that she'll carry on, or she'll call back a conversation you had 2 weeks ago. And there's just something in an environment that can be anxiety producing because it's just nonstop, even from the media side. She makes you feel comfortable, and we're huge fans of JJ. And for her to just have that moment with Stewie after the last buzzer goes off, because she has been fighting for this for so long. New York's been fighting, JJ's been fighting. So for that to kind of come together and happen together, and for her to get that recognition, because these fans were louder for John Quell than they were for anybody else. They understood how much she put the city on her back. And my favorite Jonquil moment was from last year. She was going to light the Empire State Building in the Bahamian colors for the Bahamas 50th anniversary. And I went to ask her a question, and she said, just take a minute and stop and look at where we are. And we're on top of the Empire State Building, just everything below us. And I think that that's something that I've always loved about JJ is her ability to put 100% of herself into every moment and then make sure that she's including you in that moment too. So shout out to JJ now and forever.
Yeah. We love you,
I
JJ.
love it. I love it. I feel like now we're just in story time. I could go on for ages about this Liberty team, but we must transition. And so you mentioned that you're a native New Yorker. So I wanted to ask, what are your earliest memories of playing basketball, and what was your process like falling in love with this game?
I was 4 when I was introduced to basketball. I played a lot of sports. I was an active kid. I even played piano. It was my mother's passion. I'm mixed. The Gold-Onwude is hyphenated. Gold is my mother. That's Jewish, Russian, Polish, Eastern European. Onwude, that is Nigerian. That's my dad. My mother was not an athlete, but she always had a passion for, women's opportunities. When she was in college, she wrote for the newspaper about like the women's soccer team. And when we were girls, she would make the little flyers and put them up to promote moms, bring your daughters to basketball practice. And she took photos and early learned how to put them on a website. It was really basic, but like, she had this place where like pictures from the games would like end up on the website. And like, she was the one that introduced me to the game. My dad, I probably got his athleticism. And later he became a big advocate for anything I was into, including basketball. But at first he was very traditional, old school Nigerian man from the village. And he would be like, ah, Fatima, what is this? Come and read your book. Learn to cook. He'd always be like, you and your mother running around. Who will marry you? And like all sorts of things. But eventually he came around and he saw like how important this was in my life and what I was giving and getting out of it. And of course, with a scholarship to college, yeah, he really jumped on board then.
The Stanford scholarship hits different.
Yeah, oh boy, it hit different.
It changes minds.
My dad was from, my mother's very quiet. My dad was front and center in that press conference talking about, I talk a lot. I have always supported my daughter in basketball. Like, really, we were looking at him like, okay. But he was very proud. He was very proud.
I love when we can kind of just see both sides of your upbringing coming together and just creating the story for what your life, where your passions lie. But when did you start thinking about media as a potential avenue of interest for you?
Media became a way to stay close to the game. And this is a really important question now because it points to how different the times are. So I'd always been thinking about, I was always a star basketball player, but my mind was always around building for life after basketball, which is a great thing. But it was because there weren't many, there were options, but nothing that promised me a lucrative and great life, honestly, to be frank. So it was almost like the way to be where basketball was a vehicle to get a free college education. And, I was thinking about, jobs, that could keep me close to the game that I love, whether that was like in marketing, in leadership, or in broadcasting. And I think now what's exciting about that, what's happening right now is, for young girls who really want to be hoopers, like that's really the dream. There's absolutely a path now to, obviously making a fulfilling living, but really you could be huge. This used to be reserved only for boys. The concept of like, oh, we could be rich, we could make money, we could be superstars ourselves simply because we're really great at this game. For women, we had to be so many things, at once to be validated. And like, it's okay to say like, yo, this is what I love. This is what I do. And I hoop. And the extension of that is not just, I just pointed out like the immediate direct impact on young girls and what they can aspire for who are hoopers, but the societal impact of this is what girls and boys and society begins to normalize as what's possible and the potential of, not only just women athletes, but women on a whole. So all of these types of like upgrades permeate the entire society. It changes the way we think, move, act, speak, all of that. And so yeah, that's my, thoughts on that. It was a different landscape for a young female hooper when I was coming up.
I really love that so much. And it feeds directly kind of into our next question, which we've seen throughout the season that you have been a part of this speaker series, Sharing the Wealth, which was held this summer by Fountain House. And alongside your sister, Annie, where you are using your platform, which you've worked really hard to grow, to be outspoken about mental health and to advocate for awareness. And could you speak about maybe the importance of not just having that conversation, but what that journey was like for you to that openness, to being that vulnerable, speaking on something that's really essential, but also so deeply personal?
Yeah. First of all, thank you guys for noticing and paying attention. And I appreciate that. And, again, doing the New York Liberty was a blessing in so many ways. Like, obviously, I covered a championship team, but it also allowed me to be present in New York. I normally live in California and sometimes Miami, but um, so it was a homecoming to where I'm from. It was a reason to be in New York for an extended period of time. And because I was physically there, I was able to help my sister get something off the ground. And we had talked for a while about how we could make impact in mental health and wellness areas, but it was hard to really bring anything to life with me in California and her in New York. She's living with mental illness, which we've discussed, throughout the series. And it really shook up, when you have mental illness, it's not just that one person's problem, it becomes a family, um, situation to handle. And not to mention our family, it's like a storm of all the worst things at once. My mother was right around the same time Annie was struggling, really starting to show the signs of an early onset dementia, which she was diagnosed with which now is a full-blown Alzheimer's. And currently, she's completely out of it now, but she's alive and she can't talk, she can't walk, she doesn't know what's going on. But at the time, she was like more just having a hard time dealing with every day. And she lost jobs at a time when we really needed it. My dad did go back to Nigeria. And Annie struggled hard once it hit, mental illness. And I'm talking like severe mental illness, things like that. Um, I always allow her to share her diagnoses. But uh, it often hits sometimes like right when you become a teenager, like something chemical happens. Like, so, Annie was just like me, like playing ball. In fact, she was kind of better. She had made it into the specialized New York schools. I didn't. And she was on track, to possibly just do as I did. And all of a sudden, like rapid shakeup in our lives and horrible things happened, to Annie, and she was on the streets. And then actually our mother was on the streets. We lost our apartment. She was in and out of psych wards. And, 15 years ago, the conversation around mental health and wellness, was not what it is now. So it took a long time to find the right therapists, social workers. God bless a good social worker, medicines, and support. And, um, our family was homeless. Annie was in wards and we were struggling. And so, like, I say this to say that now, if you fast forward to now, through a lot of great kindness and hard work and God's favor and just Annie's resilience, our family's on the up and up. Mom's in a place that focuses on Alzheimer's. My dad passed, but Annie's doing great. She just graduated from NYU this May with her degree at age 31. So to tell you, like, hey, this has been a testimony, this has been a journey. There's been a lot of starts and stops. But she did it. And so the conversation was between us was, okay, I know you care about wellness, and I think you've got an inspirational story here. Annie, you inspire me. You are the most resilient person in our family. Um, I think you've got a story to tell, and I think we can help others. And so, together this summer, we created a program called Sharing the Wealth. And our focus is on wellness and careers because, and we partnered with an organization, a nonprofit that Annie's a member of in New York called Fountain House. And they work with very high functioning, aspirational folks, adults with mental illness that are looking to live a productive life. And so I brought in through my Rolodex various leaders of industry from different career fields. And the whole conversation focus was about a toolkit of wellness practices, tools, lessons that they've learned, weaknesses that they had to overcome, navigating like trying to pursue a career. So like, you know, how do you deal with wins and losses, communication, making sure you've rested enough, boundary setting, teamwork, all of that. And so just to wrap this up, it started off with Annie and myself for a session sharing our journeys. Then our next guest was Shayna Stevenson, Chief Brand Officer of the New York Liberty. Then we had Jadena, musician, creative, Grammy-nominated artist. Then we had Steve Pammon, a bigwig in entertainment and sports. He's the president of Versus. And we finished with Joakim Noah, also a New York guy, obviously a NBA star basketball player. And and we served the Fountain House community, and it was awesome. And it exceeded all expectations. And I think the community we did this with, Annie and I co-hosted conversations around the wellness toolkit. I think they got a ton out of it. It can be repeated. And I never did anything like this with my little sister. So I'm just so proud of her. She shined, she did great. And I think this is where our family would like to make impact.
That's tremendous. And first off, thank you for being so open and sharing that. But we're gonna get you out of here probably on that because I don't know how we best it. But I guess my last question would just be, what are some of your own day-to-day takeaways after an experience that was so fulfilling? Because it sounds like this is something that radically has shifted your own perceptions and maybe in terms of being in New York and having that time that you spent with Annie, how has your relationship grown and evolved because you were able to be side by side in these conversations and kind of, yeah, what's the next step? And how can people follow along or support, or what are some resources that might be available to them?
Yeah. So, I really appreciate the chance to talk about it. We were literally sometimes the hardest thing is just getting started. And so I was like, let's do something that's executable over the course of the summer in New York. And we learned so much, like within the series and certainly after it. Um, this is our first time doing anything like this, like in a philanthropic way. And I think like we're going to further build this out. We're certainly going to do it again. We're very thankful for the partnership with Fountain House, which is they're doing incredible work in the mental health space and for people living with mental illness in New York. Um, I mean, for me, it was the best summer of my life. I think just the ability to one, do something positive and give back. This was something that shook our whole family up, and to turn a lot of pain into something positive, we hold that. That's our strength that we hold now. Um, that's a way to take control, take some control back in your life. And even now, it's not done, unfortunately with these things, like I said, there's a lot of starts and stops. A lot of it's out of your control. All of a sudden you're having a manic episode. We've had some stops where we took a lot of steps back, and I wasn't sure if we were going to get back to where we were. And so there's recognizing that there may be new versions of yourself or this path forward. And I think for me it was also really special because I'm really proud of my sister. Who I never spent this much collaborative time with her. And she's very smart. I'm the professional broadcaster. We were on a stage in front of a full room with stars of their fields, and she did a great job, you know, help co-hosting the conversation, and she got better and better. And, that was something that was a concern. And then um, I just think like we're going to lean on people who have experience doing this on like what it means to build it out. But the hardest part was getting started, and it exceeded all of our expectations. So sharing the wealth is something that, oh, the last realization, we were doing it for an audience of people living with mental illness.
Yeah.
Literally, the next round, it has to open up to everyone because any person could gain from these. These conversations were so eye-opening, and like any person living with mental illness or not could use this wellness toolkit in navigating the ups and downs of productive lives of careers. And so I think that will be the next step forward, opening it up a bit. This was certainly a private event for Fountain House community members, the first iteration.
Well, Roz, as Miles said, I just can't thank you enough for sharing all of this. I feel like this is stuff like this is why Miles and I started this podcast almost 2 years ago now. So we just appreciate you so much. And congratulations to Annie too. That's just tremendous on the graduation, on the series, all of it. Anything you would like to plug before we say goodbye?
No, I'm proud. You guys have done a great job. You cover the league with great intellect. And I know your coverage has helped my coverage for the Liberty. And it's part of, look, everything's better when the team is winning. And of course, even the chicken tenders taste better when, the team you're covering is winning. But just a beautiful experience overall from the team to the surrounding community of media members. Pulling up to Barclays always felt really happy and buoyant. And so I thank you for being part of that culture.
Thank you so much. This was amazing. And we will definitely be seeing you around.